Good morning. It is Wisdom Wednesdays. I am Ariana Newcomer, Dove Oracle Priestess, and today my topic is the voice of my soul, what I discovered from losing and reclaiming my voice. And I have to let you know I'm dealing with allergies this morning, so if I'm blinking a lot, it's because things are blooming here where I live in California. It's spring, and my pollen allergies are really active today. So, I used to be a professional singer. I was a professional classical singer, and I absolutely loved it. And it was really a part-time career. At the time, I was raising two small boys, but I absolutely loved it. I felt that my singing voice was the voice of my soul. And I had always sung since I was a child. I was in a children's choir in church growing up and always sang with my guitar. And then I did classical training, and I actually occasionally got paid to sing. And I sang some principal roles in regional opera companies in the Monterey Bay area where I live. And then I lost my voice, and I had to stop performing, and it was absolutely devastating to me. Really, really devastating. They say when a singer loses their voice, it's like losing a limb, and I can attest to that. It really was just an incredibly deep and profound loss for me not to be able to just open my mouth and sing the way I always had. And the truth is that Spirit had to, whack me over the head with a 2x4 and take away this thing that I loved. I really had thought of my singing voice as the voice of my soul. And it was my greatest joy in life outside of my kids to sing and perform. But I had actually been using that affirmation, the applause, those good feelings that I got from performing and singing and teaching singing to cover up the fact that the rest of my life was a mess. Truth was that my marriage was toxic, and my road to reclaiming my voice had to take me through getting a divorce. But there were many other pieces of the voice injury. One piece was acid reflux from my stomach being tied in knots all the time, worrying about when's the next argument going to be happening at home, and trying not to, trying to hold things in front of the kids. But another piece was that I literally could not hear that I wasn't on pitch in a certain part of my range. And I didn't discover that until I was several years in. This is after the divorce, and still trying to be able to sing on pitch, and it wasn't happening. And I discovered that I had to actually retrain my brain's ability to hear my own voice accurately. And that took me down a fascinating road of working with a therapeutic music listening program called the Listening Program, which is scientifically designed to help the brain process sound more fully and completely. So auditory processing functions in the brain are actually very complex. Really interesting thing. We tend to think about how we hear as it just this way. The sound comes in through our ear canal, and it hits our eardrum, and it's passed to the little bones in the middle ear, and then to the inner ear, and then it goes into the brain. But we also feel sound in our bodies. If you've ever been to a concert where the bass is turned up really loud, the whole place is vibrating, and the sound is vibrating your body. It's one of those cars that goes by with someone who's put in a big bass boom speakers, and it rattles your windows and it vibrates your body. Our own voices actually vibrate ourselves, our own bodies. And this is called bone conduction, this ability, this feeling sound with our bodies. Our bones vibrate the sound to the inner ear, pass the sound to the inner ear. So there are these two ways that we are hearing. And auditory processing, there are at least 12 different functions in the brain that are required for us to make sense out of the sound that the ears are collecting. So I like to say that hearing is what the ears do, the act of collecting sound. Listening is what the brain does with what the ears hear. And it's actually a set of very, very complex processes that all have to work together in complete harmony for us to make sense out of the sound that our ears collect. So I had to retrain my own brain so I could hear my own voice accurately. So that was a really interesting piece. And then as I started realizing too that I had really lost myself in that marriage, trying to be a good mom, trying to be a good wife with a relationship that really didn't work and that wasn't honoring. My voice was not heard and respected in the marriage, and myself was not fully honored and respected in the marriage. And I realized that I have to claim my speaking voice as the voice of my soul. So I started out on this path of retraining my ability to claim my speaking voice as the voice of my soul, because it took me many, many, many years to be able to sing again, and I still can't sing the way I used to, though I can enjoy singing again. And that led me on a path of helping other women be able to claim their voices in the world. And I began working with speaking voices and speaker training, but a much deeper work of claiming the voice of our soul, because our speaking voice is actually us in this very fundamental way. Did you know that your voice print is almost as unique as your fingerprints? And you know that when somebody calls you, even without the caller ID, you know if it's your mother on the phone by the sound of her voice, or if it's your child or your spouse or a cousin or a dear friend. We know who they are by the sound of their voice. That's how unique our voices are. And most of us don't use the full expressive capability of this really miraculous instrument that is the human voice. Think about what it can do. If you're familiar with the old Looney Tunes cartoons, Mel Blanc was the voice actor who voiced most of those cartoon characters, from Tweety Bird to Bugs Bunny to Elmer Fudd to the Tasmanian Devil to, just this incredible range of voices. So he was like at that tip top of the voice expressive capabilities, using the capabilities of the voice. We all actually have so much more capability for expressiveness with this instrument, which is our unique instrument of communication and connection, than we generally use or even realize. Because just like I didn't know that I wasn't hearing my own voice accurately, you don't know that you're not hearing your own voice accurately. And one of my early clients who helped me uncover this work that I do around what I call voice stories was a woman named Connie. And she came to work with me because she was really tired of people talking over her all the time. And she felt like the family doormat. She was taking care of an elderly dad. Her sister wasn't helping. She had an adult son living with her, not doing much to help, and a brother living with her in between jobs and not helping out. And she had a tiny little voice like this, and she wasn't a tiny woman. And she was also having trouble getting a new job. She was in between jobs. She was highly educated, highly accomplished. She'd been a chief financial officer in several different Silicon Valley startups, but this tiny little voice like this. So I started giving her exercises to increase the volume and expressiveness in her voice. And she came back for our next session and said, geez, when I do that, I feel like I'm yelling. So I pulled up my decibel meter, which I have on my iPhone. And I said, okay, hi, Barbara, thanks for joining. I said, okay, show me what you think of as yelling. And she did, and the needle barely moved on the decibel meter. I said, okay, let me show you what I think of as yelling. And that's only about a quarter of my big opera yelling voice. I don't want to blast your ears out. And the needle went bang over into the red zone. And her jaw just dropped to the floor. And so I asked her, I said, were you always told to be quiet as a child? And she said, oh my God, my parents were always telling me girls should be seen and not heard. That turned out to be her core voice story. And once we revealed that, and she was able to release that story and realize that was just a story, she could do the exercises, and she developed what she called her power voice. And she called me really excited a few weeks later and said, I got the job. I used my power voice in the interview. And then at work in this new job, she found herself taking the lead in ways that she'd never done before. She started setting boundaries with her family members, just calmly and clearly. The women in her women's group stopped talking over her all the time. They listened when she spoke. And she and I used to be in Zumba class together. Originally, she would come in late and stand in the back. She started standing in the front in Zumba and smiling broadly and having a great time, enjoying herself dancing and allowing herself to be seen. So and she had a creative explosion. She also started drawing and writing poetry. So Connie is the person who allowed me to see how our voice is integrated with all aspects of ourselves and our self-expression. It is our primary mode of self-expression. And Connie didn't realize that, Connie's brain told her that she was yelling if she spoke any louder than not being heard. She had completely internalized that story that girls should be seen and not heard, and had unconsciously created a voice that couldn't be heard. Right? So we carry many, many of these stories. And one of the ones I grew up with was nice girls don't toot their own horns. Don't be arrogant. Some of the other examples that I've come across in my work with people are, no matter what I say or do, my family will never really hear me or understand me. The client who had that story had a really flat kind of voice like this. It didn't have very much expression in it at all. And, it was really boring, but she had this underlying story that said, it doesn't really matter what I say. So why should I really express myself? What I say doesn't matter. Some people have a kind of opposite end. I should always get my opinion out there really forcefully so people can't take advantage of me. Girls should always speak softly, or women should always speak softly. It's more important to be nice than speak your truth. It's not okay to express anger. Boy, is that a big one, especially for women. We get really shamed for expressing anger very strongly. And men have voice stories too. A common voice story for men is, I'm fine. You don't talk about what's going on for you. Or boys don't cry. Unfortunately, we still have that story, although it's got less of a hold on our culture now. Men do need to be allowed to have the full range of emotions also. Another story is, we don't have to listen to what women say. How many times have you, as a woman, felt that your voice just went in somebody's ear and right out the other side? And they never really paid attention. I've worked with a couple of women who were pilots, airline pilots. And they found that their male co-pilots wouldn't listen to them unless they dropped the pitch of their voice and started talking more like a guy. Right? If they talked in their normal pitch range, there was like no response from the co-pilots. But if they started talking more like a guy, boom, they were paying attention. That's a cultural voice story. So we have personal voice stories and cultural voice stories. And people who have dealt with abuse growing up, it's not safe to speak up and speak out. Literally, it wasn't safe. Some people have to feel like they have to rush to get the words out before they get cut off. I had one client whose mother would always cut her off, so she would just rush to speak. So having traumatic experiences at home, at school, or an art or music lesson that caused you to shut down your self-expression. One of my clients had auditioned for a solo with her high school choir, and the conductor actually laughed at her. So she never, not only did she never sing again, but she shut down her speaking voice as well. And these are habits that we start with, but they become unconscious. And we don't realize we're doing them, and our brains will tell us that we're using a lot more expression than we think we are. So I am really passionate about helping people to reclaim your whole authentic voice. Use that whole expressive range of this miraculous instrument that we have been given as human beings, and to stop holding yourself back by holding your voice back. So I'd be delighted to talk with you if you're interested in doing some of this work with me. It's one of my delights to do, is to help voices become more expressive, to help you express more of your whole self into the world and become, when you do that, you become more fully yourself. So I'll put a link in the comments for how you can contact me. And in the meantime, play with voice, play with expression. Pretend that you're talking to a room full of squiggly kindergartners, that you have to keep their attention just by the sound of your voice, and see what happens. Think about, where are the circumstances where I really hold my voice back, and why? Do I have a voice story, and what might it be? See you next time.